Hello and welcome to Core Finance. I'm Matt Brown and I'm joined today by Guy Schoen, who is CEO of explainthemarkets.com. How are you today, Guy?
Very good, thanks Matt. Great to be here.
It's great to have you on the show today. Can you just explain to our viewers what you do and what explainthemarket.com is?
Well, Explain the Market's an economic research business. We try and get under the skin of the big news and economic stories that are out there and try and do sort of further analysis and get to the heart of what's really driving the issue. But I'm also a journalist as well, and I'm a contributor to newspapers like The Sun and various different BBC programmes, and obviously enjoy coming here too. So we try and mix up sort of proper, robust research with also trying to get under the skin of the issue in the media as well.
And I believe you've recently written an article for The Sun about consumer spending habits, and in particular a certain area. If you can just enlighten us on that.
It's interesting because it's interesting to find out people's reaction to this, but one of the most interesting areas for us is when we work with partners like The Sun and others, what we try and do is get under the skin of business and economic issues, but also those issues that cross over into consumer media as well and grab the attention of very large numbers of people. And on this latest piece, we did some analysis into the online dating market. And the numbers that we found were absolutely huge. You know, we all, I think, know there's been a boom in that market, that sort of thing perhaps didn't exist to the same degree, you know, 10, 15 years ago. But when you think there are now over 1,400 dating and dating-based apps and websites in Britain alone, you know, something like when you add up all the individual things that we spend money on that are associated with dating, the figure comes out at something like over £30 billion a year. So we're spending more and more on sort of searching for that mate, you know, trying to get that date. And the other thing that's interesting is when you look at the way that these companies have sort of commercialized this, you know, it's really interesting to see what the numbers of people that they've kind of managed to capture. So if you just look at the top 5 providers, say Match and a few others, you find they've got over 10 million subscribers already just in the UK. So huge numbers of people are relying on these sites, but some of the charges people are paying.
And you have to pay for it. This isn't a free service.
It's really interesting. In some cases it is free. In some cases it's free to begin with, but then inside the app you're encouraged to adopt additional services.
There's an upsell taking place.
Exactly. And in many cases, they're not free at all. So there are a couple that we found that were well over £1,000 a year just for the basic membership fees. So a lot of money is changing hands, but it seems like people actually are now fully prepared to hand over that cash because it's become the normal way of actually meeting your other half.
And as you say, it's the new normal for meeting or getting a match or meeting a partner. 10 years ago, I think there was a bit of a stigma with dating agencies, and certainly online had a stigma attached to it. So do you think that stigma has now gone, or has it been the rise in the handheld app? Is it a combination of these two factors that have really led to this boom in the UK?
I think it is. I mean, it's predominantly, it's helped by all sorts of other mega trends. I mean, obviously now everything, the world is online, you know, we've got apps for absolutely every aspect of life. We're time pressed, and we're encouraged to believe that we're time pressed as well. You know, that's become, you know, almost like a sort of an axiom that sort of follows us round about how time pressed we are. So everything, it's now become habit to look for apps to help us with very important parts of life that previously we would never sort of outsource to a bit of technology. But it's just really interesting to see the difference between, you know, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was a 20-something. You're right, there would have been perhaps a bit of a stigma, you know, around using something like a dating site. I think it is fair to say that's now gone. The other thing that's interesting, though, is what are the strategies of these very successful dating apps and websites. And a lot of them now are actually reaching their tentacles outside of the online world into the real world of bricks and mortar. And we're seeing sort of deals done and acquisitions done. So, for example, Match have done a deal recently with some coffee shops to try and sort of create events where people can meet in coffee shops. So we're seeing this sort of the dominance that these very large providers have had. They're actually utilising that, leveraging it, and moving into new territories as well.
And you mentioned it was at 1,400 apps in the UK. I mean, that's a lot of apps,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of players in the market, and no pun intended there. But can you see consolidation taking place? I mean, you can't sign up to 1,400 apps. That would be very expensive. You wouldn't have enough money left to take a girl or a guy out on a date if you did that.
I think that there's got to be. I mean, there's a certain degree of inevitability about that. When you've seen the rapid growth, you've seen sort of capital strength now of some of the biggest players, and also not just that, but the strength in terms of data that they have, and the value of that data, and the sort of subsequent ability to use that to leverage further capital. I think it's fairly likely that there will be some acquisitions and some consolidation, because 1,400 is just too big a number, I think, even with 10 million subscribers.
And do you see, you mentioned all that data. I mean, I assume with these apps you have to put in your likes, dislikes, film, sports, food, etc. So there is a wealth of data that probably consumers aren't giving over on other sites. That has a huge value in it. And could you see, as you mentioned, leveraging up to coffee shops, but could you see these sites getting involved with particular advertisers or selling that data on? That could be very profitable.
Well, you see an interesting effect because the market is quite crowded. Each of the providers are looking to differentiate, and so what that means is the combined list of data items is getting increasingly longer, because you'll get one site that'll be very focused on hobbies, for example. So they'll look to get your sort of top 5 hobbies from you, whereas another site will then look to differentiate and focus on your sort of financial status and career prospects. What this means is that this long list of data about all aspects of our lives is being captured. So it means that actually there's an additional prize in terms of consolidation, not just the revenue that you can make and the additional revenue streams, but also that more extensive pot of data, which, as we all know, really adds value to businesses, particularly when you're trying to negotiate and leverage access to more money.
Fantastic. And in the article you mentioned that Brits, or you found out the Brits spend a lot more in comparison to the rest of Europe. Why do you think that is? Are we desperate, or are we a bit more willing to splash the cash on finding our mate?
I think there's a combination of things. I think we've been to some degree early adopters of this type of technology. I think we've got access to a large number of providers here in the UK, and I think there is a sense actually that this is something that can be fun. We have a sort of a dating culture now in the UK, but I think there's lots of research has been done about the differences. I think it's fair to say we'd need to do a lot more to fully explain the differences between Spain and Italy and ourselves. But you're right to say there is something about Brits and dating apps which is sort of fueling this market, and the success doesn't seem to show any signs of stopping yet.
Fantastic. Guy, thanks very much for joining us today.